And thank you very much for passing on the word to me. Hello, everyone from Ceres, northern Greece. I am Efthymios Rizos. I'm an archaeologist, member of the Archaeological Service of Greece. Before we start with the presentation of this session's book, a few words about the format of today's business for those of us who have just joined and may not be familiar of how we operate today in the book festival. So I will be giving a short presentation about our author and her book. Then Giulia Marsili will talk about the book for about 10 minutes. And finally, we shall be accepting questions. Questions are to be asked only in a written form using the Q&A fields. And then I shall be reading them out and Giulia will be answering them. Let me also join everyone who has spoken so far in thanking the organizers for this very innovative idea and for such a very enjoyable and hugely useful event. I'm sure that regardless of the COVID situation, it will not be the last online book festival. It was a very, very clever idea. It's my pleasure to welcome and to introduce to you a colleague from Italy, Giulia Marsili. Is she here? Is Giulia here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hello, Giulia. Great. I was a little bit anxious because I could not see or hear you. With Giulia's book, we stay in the world of epigraphy and of late antiquity. But we move from the field of public inscriptions of monumental epigraphy that was the subject of Sean's book to a group of less conspicuous texts, but not at all uninteresting. Those of us who see them, who come across them during visits to archaeological sites, can be inclined to overlook them, but I would recommend to everyone in this virtual room, when traveling is possible again, to go to St. Sophia in Constantinople and try to pass through the building without noticing any of those little stonemasons marks on the marbles. At some point, I mean, it can really make you obsessive of the subject, or at least that's the case with me. So it was a great pleasure for me to be notified to discover about the monograph of Giulia, which appeared a few months ago, and which discusses this very, very interesting and important body of material. A few words about our author. Giulia is a research fellow of the University of Bologna in Italy, where she did her studies. She studied classics at Bologna, then was specialized in late antique and Byzantine archaeology there. She also holds a degree from the Augustinianum in Rome in patristics, I understand, no? In Bologna, she completed her PhD on the subject, which has led to the current monograph. She has participated in several research projects, both in the library, including several online projects like the Europeana and other databases that are run by the University of Bologna, but has also participated in several prestigious fieldwork projects, including the Italian excavations at Kos and Gortin, and the excavations at Ravenna. And she has participated in publishing material and the results from all these projects. Her publications are already very numerous and cover various subjects of the fields I have been talking about. So epigraphy, the organization of architecture and the architecture-related professions in late antiquity, subject on iconography, and material from the excavations in Ravenna. She has also, besides her current book, she has been one of the editors and contributors of an exhibition catalog on the archaeology and topography of Christian Bologna. To the book now. The monograph we're talking about is entitled Archeologia del cantiere protobizantino, cave, maestranze e committenti attraverso i marchi dei marmorari. So the archaeology of early Byzantine construction, quarries, workshops, and commissioners through the marble masons marks. Very, very clear. The basis of her discussion is the masons marks that we know from the various marble architectural members. This is the body of the evidence, and the narrative that emerges from this, the fascinating narrative, is, I should say, the most comprehensive, the fullest discussions about the organization of the world of construction in late antiquity, from the quarry, from the quarrying of the columns, of the capitals, of the bases, what have you, to the building, the construction site, to the placing of these elements into their proper order. The book is accompanied by a catalog of the material that she visited, which is over 3,300 marks from around the Mediterranean, mostly focusing on Constantinople, Asia Minor, and Greece. It is a very, very learned book, which is evidently based on both a very exhaustive research of bibliography in the library, but also extensive traveling and fieldwork. Her extensive experience from sites in the Eastern Mediterranean is plainly clear in the book. The book is organized in 4 chapters, starting with an introduction about what we know about the function of construction in the under the Principate, in the early Roman period, in the Roman imperial period, which is, of course, offers the proper background for the developments of late antiquity. Then there is a chapter on the function of the quarries of Proconnesus, which works closely together with the 3rd chapter which is the synthesis about the masons, the stone masons marks, and what they tell us about construction in late antiquity. And why Proconnesus? Of course, one has to point out that there is a strong focus on Constantinople in the book, because the bulk of the material comes from Constantinople, because it is from Constantinople and from the quarries of Proconnesus that we have the fullest body of evidence, and that give us the fullest information about how things work. And finally, in chapter 4, she visits the written sources and the information that they give us about the organization of work and about the professions related to construction, including the leaders of the projects like the Mechanopi and Architectonus and the various artisans. It is, as I said, a hugely learned book. It's just an understatement to say that it is useful. It is really most of us working on late antique and Byzantine construction will find a lot of fascinating and interesting stuff to work on. And I think that it is completely superfluous for me to keep speaking. I pass on the word to Giulia, and we very much look forward to hearing her talking about her book and how she worked on it. And as I said, after Giulia's talk, we shall be welcoming your questions in the Q&A field, which I will be reading out for Giulia to answer. Giulia, it's to you.
Good afternoon to everybody, and thank you, Efthymios, if I may, for your kind presentation. First of all, I would like to thank and express my gratitude to the organizers of this amazing event, and especially Dr. Bouras-Vallianatos, and it's an honor for me to be here. Well, I will share my presentation, just a second. Okay. Can you see it? Okay. Okay. The book focuses on the building site in the early Byzantium, with specific reference to the segment of stone production, chiefly marble. The main index fossil for understanding the shapes and the processes of the craftsmanship, as well as the patterns of the production and distribution of marble items, are the so-called meson marks. Early Byzantine meson marks are namely simple letters, abbreviated names or monograms, which label a high percentage of architectural and liturgical furnishing, mostly carved in Peloponnesian marble. These epigraphic documents are a unique repository of information about the administrative organization of quarry districts, technical procedures for carving and assembling marble furniture, as well as about the operational arrangement of workshops, their movement, and on a broader scale, about the functioning and economics of the marble market in early Byzantium. But why a book on this topic? It all started from here. In 2009, I was in charge of the study of architectural decoration of St. Gabriel Basilica in Co. On that occasion, I bumped into singular engraving, and I started a brief research about this kind of epigraphic signs. I realized that after the fundamental work of Friedrich Deichmann on the Mesons marks of Ravenna, just a few contributions had raised the subject. These studies usually dealt with the recognition of marks and comparison with similar signs from the Mediterranean, generally ascribing the label marbles to the imperial workshops. Very few works focusing on specific monuments has tried to place the system of meson marks in a broader archaeological context, but mostly it lacked a systematic study of meson marks in relation to the management of marble workshop, as well as to the early Byzantine public building system, referring both to imperial and local patronage. Thus, the presented work tries to fill this gap. The adopted approach is a diachronic, interregional, and multidisciplinary. It focuses on the period between the 4th and the end of the 6th century, but in-depth insights are reserved to the earlier experiences and to the following transformations. In this regard, the first chapter of the book deals with the system of marble production in early imperial times, with a focus on the intriguing issue of changes occurred in the exploitation and management of quarries between the 3rd and the 1st century. Referring to geography, the whole Mediterranean basin is under discussion, both referring to main urban context and remote provincial cities. Main data refer to Peloponnesian marble, which for many reasons, not least for the proximity of marble quarries to the center of the imperial power, in the early Byzantine period became the major source for marble supply of architectural enterprises in the capital and the provinces. The study turns to archaeological, epigraphical, but also papyrological, literary, and archival sources, and make use of previous archaeometric and topographical analysis too. Specifically, in the last section of the book, the topic of the early Byzantine building site is investigated by means of a wide exploration of written sources, which allow to contextualize the phenomenon of marble workshops and architectural enterprises in the proper social background. But the core of the book is the final catalogue of more than 3,300 epigraphic signs. A sort of obsession, as you right mentioned. They are carved on more than 2,900 marble items, some of which inscribed more than once, from several archaeological contexts, such as Constantinople, Asia Minor, Pontic area, continental and insular Greece, Northern Africa, the Balkans, Italy, Spain. They have been collected through bibliographical researches and first-hand surveys in many archaeological contexts all over the Mediterranean. Of course, it does not pretend to be exhaustive. However, it offers the first systematic inventory on a broad scale. Building upon this wide collection of marks, organized around a chronocontextual criterion, a classification of marks is proposed. Early Byzantine marks can be divided into quarry marks, among which control marks, destination or commissioning marks, assemblage or positioning marks are counted, and workshop marks. In addition, storage marks designate a temporary deposit of artifacts waiting for their final destination. At last, these assembly marks can be considered as secondary marks and were usually carved on artifacts after the dismantling of existing buildings. In a comparative perspective, such a classification allows to understand the meaning and functionality of these signs in the frame of the marble supply chain and the building site. Being mostly related to artifacts in Proconnesian marble, they must be considered as a privileged means for communicating technical and managing issues between the craftsmen based in the Marmara Island and the workshop in Constantinople or its neighborhood. Conversely, a minor percentage of marks from distant regions label different kinds of stone too. Referring to the identity and management of the marble workshops, strong evidence is provided by workshop marks, such this ones, which represent the bulk of documents. They consist in 1, 2, 3 letters or monograms, which can be sold with a personal name. The joint observation of the finishing degree of the items, the traces of working tools, and the positioning of these epigraphic signs suggests that these marks were carved in an intermediary stage of workmanship, specifically between the first running out and the following dressing stage. Likely, these marks aim to identify the head chief who supervised his own artisan's work and check the products commissioned by the patrons. A key question about workshop marks concerns the rationale of the labeling procedure in the frame of the marble industry and the building process. Presumably, workshop marks serve to certify and keep count of the production. Each sign would report the provenance of single batches of materials, thus allowing to quantify the working time of each stoneworker's team. Moreover, in many cases, the interaction between mason marks and archaeological data led us to formulate some hypotheses about the logistics of the building site, as, for example, for positioning marks on paving slabs of the upper story of St. Sophia Cathedral and workshop marks from the Basilica of St. Sergius and Bacchus in Constantinople. A comparative and quantitative analysis of workshop marks has led to the identification of 165 stoneworkers teams operating between the 5th and the 6th century for building commissions in the Byzantine capital and its provinces. Among them, 55 units seems to have been operational in the first 30 years of the 6th century, with the peak of evidence in Constantinople mainly related to the opening of imposing building sites under the reign of Justinian. Apart from Constantinople, the discovery of marks attributable to metropolitan atelier in provincial building sites has made it possible to analyze the distribution patterns of stone products and reconstruct the mobility of goods and workers as well. In this regard, the possibility to pinpoint archaeological context where the same workshop marks appear on artifacts in Proto-Asian marble and other stone types, at time from local quarries, enables to address the intriguing topic of traveling workshops and identify some of the more dynamic artisanal units across the Mediterranean. To conclude, the possibility of bringing together complementary sources enabled the reconstruction of a well-articulated segment of the labor market of the ancient world, where a number of actors were engaged at different levels of the society. In this respect, mason marks offer a broad cross-section of the building site life, referring to the technical and economic issues and relations among the concerned social groups. They can be considered as means of understanding a wide range of questions and throw light on a category of workers who traditionally used to disappear behind their own work, without leaving memory of themselves and their individuality. Thank you.